Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at Tamiya's 1:48 scale Heinkel He-219 A-7 UHU. This is a very funky looking aircraft and I can't wait to get into it. I hope you enjoy. Starting off in the cockpit for this one, here you can see me cementing a headrest to the seat. Both seats in this kit are two pieces. This one is the navigator seat. The bottom piece goes onto this one, and then for the pilot seat it's the headrest. Here I am cementing some more little miscellaneous parts that go on to build up the cockpit shape. The detail in this kit is absolutely phenomenal, but it is nice to note that the instrument panel is the only interior component that comes with a decal. Everything else you're going to have to hand paint yourself, which wasn't a big deal for me. I didn't mind that. I love hand painting when I can, but, you know, for some people it might be a little bit of a downside if they're not a fan of hand painting stuff. But anyway, catching up with the kit. Here you can see me cementing the cockpit seats into place. Here I am putting in what I can only assume is a periscope or a binocular sort of thing for the navigator. All of the interior components now can be given a coating of a flat black primer. So the first bit of paint that's going to be going down on this aircraft is Vallejo's Model Air Black Gray, which is RLM 66. This is going to be loosely black based. I say loosely because there's not really a lot of surfaces to properly black base it on. So yeah, loosely black based over the cockpit surfaces, and then we'll go back over with a uniform coating as I normally do. Moving on to the interiors of the fuselage halves, now we're just going to be painting that up in the same RLM 66 color, the black gray color. Something to note here is that the cockpit is actually pretty visible on the final build because it sits pretty high up in the aircraft, if that makes sense. So do make sure to spend a bit of your time here just because you can see quite a bit of it on the finished build. Here I am detail painting up the navigator's instrument panel. These switches here are just being picked out in an insignia white with a really thin brush. And then I'll go back in after in some of the dials and paint some little lines and make some of the switches red and yellow and different things like that just to bring out some color. Not completely accurate, obviously. Not all the switches would be yellow and red like that, but it does add a pop of color and gives your eyes something else to look at. So, you know, you're sacrificing a little bit of realism for some visual interest in the model, which I'm okay with. Looking at the cockpit seats now, here I'm just painting up the headrest in a British khaki color. As I've said before, a little bit ironic using a British or Allied colors on German aircraft, but the color matches pretty well, so I'm not going to complain about it. Apologies for the out of focus shot here. I didn't realize that the seat wasn't completely in frame, so again, apologies about that. Here you can see me sponge chipping on some more of that British khaki color, and the reason behind this is when I was looking at reference pictures of the He-219 cockpit, it looked like the paint where the pilot's butt would go was like flaking off and revealing some brown metal or wood or something underneath it, and I thought this was really cool, and I wanted to recreate it. So I just sponge chip on some of that khaki color, and it looked pretty good. Here you can see me doing some detail painting with an AK weathering pencil. This is in the silver color. Just dotting it onto the areas where I want chipping to be, and it looks pretty good in the end. Here you can see I tried my hand at some scratch building. I just melted a bit of sprue and stretched it out, and then cut it to shape, stuck it in the fuselage, and painted it yellow to recreate some piping that was there on the actual aircraft that I noticed after looking at reference pictures. Now, here you can see the included cockpit floor that's made out of die-cast metal. When I opened the kit and saw this, I squealed. I was so unbelievably happy that this was included in the kit, because with kits that have such a shape as this aircraft, you know, you're always worried about it being a tail seat, and you're always worried about, like, oh no, like, do I have enough nose weight or not? So having stuff included in the kit like this just completely gets rid of all of that fear, and it's absolutely fantastic to see. I was so happy to see this. So following up with that little spew of emotion that I just had, I painted the diecast section in the same RLM 66 color, and now I'm gluing the plastic section into that. It was extremely satisfying to have all these parts together. It felt like a box of Lego. Like it just slot and snapped into place. It was awesome, and all the parts fit incredibly well. This was a fantastic part of the build, and honestly probably the highlight of the build for me. Having the noseband included in the kit was similar to Tamiya's P38 Lightning, if you know what I'm talking about. It came with the 3 stainless steel balls, whereas this one came with the actual cockpit tub itself, but it was just awesome to see. I was so happy about it. But anyway, catching up with the build, here you can see me doing some more chipping with that weathering pencil again, silver color. It's a pretty straightforward process, just kind of dabbing and poking wherever you want there to be a bit of chips. And a few seconds prior, you saw me showing off the cockpit with the decal seatbelts or harnesses and the instrument panel with the decal put in. I never normally use the decal seatbelts, but I wanted to see what they'd look like on this kit, so I popped them in place, and they didn't look too bad. Here I am now giving you a little showcase of the finished cockpit. Definitely the highlight of the build for me. This cockpit was absolutely fantastic. Having the nose weight included, all of the surface detail that was on it, the decals they went down great. It was a fantastic part of the build. But moving on now, we're going to go ahead and put said cockpit into one side of the fuselage. I was a little bit skeptical about the fitment here just because of that big piece of metal, but it fit absolutely perfectly. A little tiny bit of filler was needed on the spine of the aircraft, but overall it was a quick 5-minute fix. It was just amazing. Here you can see I popped a little bit of what I can only assume is armored glass in place. And here you can see me putting on some more miscellaneous parts. That's the little panel with the guns there. Here I am putting in the roof of the wheel well. I didn't paint the wheel wells at this stage in the build just because I didn't really want to deal with masking them off when I was painting the rest of the build. So what I did was I left them blank, and then later in the build I masked off the outside of the engine nacelle and sprayed up the wheel wells like that. I've done it before. I think I did it on the Revell F-18, and it worked out fine. It was great. Taking a look at the flaps here now, these are made of 2 pieces, pretty straightforward, top and bottom. It's good to note the kit does give you the option to put them in the raised or lowered position, which I was very happy about. As you guys know, I love options. So if you wanted to have them raised, you could. I opted to have them lowered just because it adds a bit more life to the aircraft and it's a little bit more realistic, because when the aircraft is sitting on the ground cold and dark, the flaps obviously would be down because they wouldn't have hydraulics powering them. Here I am cementing a little cone at the back of the engine nacelle. Really cements the shape of this aircraft. The whole aircraft is just very pointy and skinny and long. It's a really interesting looking aircraft. I personally love it, but I know that it definitely might not be for everyone. There, as you just saw, I was building up the engine cowling, and here, as you can see now, I'm building up the horizontal stabilizers. And now I'm putting on the vertical stabilizers. The vertical stabilizers were actually 1 part, it wasn't 2, which is fantastic. It eliminated any kind of seam line on the leading edge, which always sucks to sort out. It's not that fun. But yeah, fantastic part of the build, very straightforward. Getting ready to cement the wings in place now. It was at this point in the build that I also squealed because I found out that there was wing spars included. It's always nice to have wing spars on an aircraft kit of this size, whether it be a 1:48, 1:72, 1:32, whatever it is. It's always nice to have wing spars because it gives you a little bit of extra security with that structural support. Here I'm gluing the horizontal and vertical stabilizers to the back half of the aircraft. There was an audible snap here when I got it in place. It was super satisfying. I love when parts snap together. It just gives you a bit of reassurance. It was at this point in the build that I kind of noticed that this aircraft, to me, looked a little bit like a B-24. Like a really skinny B-24 Liberator, which is the fuselage and the vertical stabilizers like that. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, to me it looked a little bit like the Liberator, which was pretty interesting. Got the wings cemented on there now, and the fitment was fantastic. On the whole, no filler was needed for them whatsoever. With the wings being cemented in, I masked off all of the clear parts and glued them onto the aircraft temporarily with some PVA, primed up the aircraft in a flat black primer, and now as you can see on screen, we can get started with the paint. So initially, I'm going to be black basing this RLM76 light blue color. It's the Vallejo Model Air RLM76. And then after the black basing is done, I'm going to go over it with a uniform coating, probably 3 or 4 thin layers, spraying at about 15 psi, just to blend that in and try not to lose the effect. So just continuing that same black basing technique all across the fuselage. The entire aircraft is this RLM76 color, and then it has a grau violet color that is modeled over the top of the aircraft. The scheme that I chose, and you'll see it a little bit later, has super tight, small models all over the top of the aircraft. It was a pain in the butt to do, but really, really cool looking scheme. At this point now, the uniform coating has been put down. The color looks absolutely great. And here you can see I have the front of the panel masked off, and I'm going to be spraying an RLM76 with 4 or 5 drops of Insignia white in the mix to create a bit of a lighter tone, and then I'm going to be loosely spraying that in the panel to create the sort of effect of a faded panel, to maybe say that this panel had been replaced at some point in this He-219's career, and it's taken a bit more of this lighter color compared to the rest of the aircraft. I'm going to repeat this process a few more times on some different panels just to create some tonal variation, and then we'll get started with the models. Here you can see me showing off the scheme I'm going to be doing. There are so many models on this scheme, and they're all pretty small and they all follow the same general shape and size. So it took me quite a while to do, and on the finished model, and I think you'll agree with me, some of the models don't look super good because my airbrush was a little bit splattery. Not quite sure why, but overall, it came out pretty good. So, with that being finished up, I can go ahead and mask off the wheel wells like I was talking about earlier, and spray them up in that same RLM66 color. Came up pretty good, very happy with that. Here I am putting the landing gear in place now. These were just friction fitted, which is absolutely fantastic. I love when you're able to friction fit landing gear. Honestly, not quite sure why. It's fantastic. Kind of gives you a bit of extra security that if they're able to be friction fitted, if they don't need glue, you know that they're not going to fail on you, which is fantastic. Another note to make here as well, I love how the main landing gear look on the He-219 with the 2 tires instead of the normal 1. It looks awesome. Moving on to some more miscellaneous things now, here's a bit of glass work going into the back of the aircraft, and some antenna will come out of that. If anybody knows why that section back there was glass, please do let me know. I would love to know. Here are the propellers going in place. These were left friction fitted as well, and they were painted up in a AK Gen 3 German field gray. Fantastic color. At this point now, just getting some different antenna put in place. Here I am putting the little ring antenna on the spine of the aircraft, and that little fork-looking antenna was put in place as well. Here I am spraying up the exhaust staining on one of the engines. The exhaust staining on this side of the engine was completely overcooked, so when you're looking at the final photos, just don't look at that side of the engine. Thank you very much. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward process, spraying at about 10 psi with a flat black color. I just put the paint on a little bit too thick, did too many layers, so I do apologize for that. The exhaust shrouds were painted up in a flat black and then glued up off camera. That's a pretty straightforward process as well. Moving on to some weathering now, here I am doing some oil work around some fuel hatches on the aircraft. I just did this to kind of mimic fuel staining and stuff. Obviously, ground crew wouldn't be perfect with getting fuel into the aircraft, and sometimes it could spill on top of the engine and cause some staining and stuff, so that's what I tried to recreate here, just using a burnt umber oil. The panel line wash was just a dark panel line wash. It was almost a black color. Didn't record it just because you've seen it in almost every other one of my videos, and it's pretty much the exact same process. So if you want to see how I do my my panel line washes, go check out some of my other videos. Go a little more in depth with them there. But yeah, this is my usual process for going about oil paint weathering. The general process basically entails putting down the oil paint onto the model after putting down a thin layer of mineral spirits over where I want the oil paint to be, and then I'll go back in with a brush, dampen in some more white spirit, and kind of blend it back in as much or as little as I want. If you want to see that a little more in depth, go check out my Revell FA18E Super Hornet video. I go a lot more in depth with it there. As you can see here, I've just been blending that in with the brush soaked in mineral spirits. I keep bouncing back and forth between white spirit and mineral spirit. I'm not using different products. They are literally the exact same thing. That's just me not realizing what I'm saying. So I do apologize for that. But yeah, I'm using mineral spirits, but white spirit and mineral spirit are the exact same thing. Moving forward with the build now, I can go ahead and get the canopy masks taken off. This is a pretty straightforward process. They did their job well. A lot better than I thought they would, actually, just because of the tape that I was using. It was not very tacky, it wasn't very good, but it ended up working out in the end. Here I am cementing the canopy in the open position with a little bit of Tamiya cement. This was the thicker cement, just to make sure that it wasn't going to run on the canopy and fog it up. And I use the cement instead of PVA just because it's a little bit stronger and it dries a little quicker. An observation that I made at this point in the build as well was that a lot of German aircraft in World War II seem to follow the style of having a hinging canopy that opens to the side, which I love. It looks absolutely fantastic. You can see so much of the cockpit when it hinges open like that, and as said, it looks amazing. I love it. So at this point now, I'm going to use my my extra thin cement to hold the canopy in place while the glue dries. I'm going to get the forward radar antennas cemented onto those little stick things there on the front of the aircraft. And with that being done, that finishes up this build. If you stuck around this far into the video, thank you very, very much for watching. I had an absolute blast with this kit. This was a very, very funky looking aircraft. It was fantastic. So yeah, thank you very, very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to pass you along now for the final photos. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Believed by many in Germany's night fighter arm to have been the aircraft that could have won the air war was the Heinkel He-219. Indeed, some say it was the best night fighter of the war. Although many of the claims for the performance of the type have been questioned since, there is no doubting that, had it entered full production, the 219 might have changed the odds in the night skies over Germany. The most important voice against the 219 was Field Marshal Erhard Milch. Charged with oversight of aircraft production, he was firmly of the opinion that the 219 was a plane too many, and that its role could best be carried out by the Ju-88. Heinkel managed to produce a total of 195 of the 219s, with another 73 being produced and employed for research purposes. Those that flew shot down 104 heavy bombers.